In this podcast, I had the amazing opportunity to interview Matt Thomas, who is now a chief in a city in Arizona. He formerly worked underneath Sheriff Lamb. The thing that I loved the most about Matt was willing to talk about how he grew up, where he grew up, and lays a foundation and a roadmap for other individuals that are growing up in a similar situation where you don't have to look at your environment around you and you can set an example for that environment and go down the roadmap of success. Matt is a very proactive, encouraging young officers to get out there and do the job, be proactive, and take bad guys to jail. And I love the story of him showing his where he came from and where he's at now. Not necessarily a redemption story, but definitely growing up in a rougher part of society and then becoming such a successful law enforcement officer. Well, let me know what you think. I love the interview, but I love them all. So let me know.
So you got to ask yourself, why do you want to do this? What keeps you motivated to stay proactive and get bad guys off the street?
The facts is a big cannon against a little tiny gun of opinions, because we've all heard people give us their opinions.
Let's talk about how easy it is to get narcotics in this country.
Once they're in this country, anywhere within 2 days, the drugs will be in our cities.
Because we know knowledge is power.
Well, today on Beyond the Barrel, I have Matt Thomas, who grew up in Arizona cop, worked under the American sheriff for a while, and now ventured off on his own and kind of the chief of police at a certain agency. But before we get any of that, he was nice enough to send me his book. So let's talk a little bit about the book. Where did this come from?
My head. So the book is really about the beginning is kind of me, because I needed to lay a foundation of like who I am and why I was talking about what I was talking about. And so it kind of goes through my childhood, growing up in kind of gang infested area of South Phoenix, and that whole upbringing all the way through high school. And also wanted to lay a foundation of how a white guy has such an understanding of the Mexican culture, and talking about it as I go through the book. And then it goes into how the cartels, as we see them here in Arizona, and how we fight them in law enforcement, kind of how they're structured and some of their belief systems, and then how they bastardize some of the religious like beliefs and some of the religious figures, and how they use those in like in the narco side. And then it goes through operations that we did, counter cartel operations. And we had very unique operations down here that were counter cartel, counter Sinaloa cartel specifically, where we were out in the open desert doing almost ranger type patrols. And we would set up almost military type operations with LPOPs on hills and having an overwatch, and then setting up jump teams that would jump them as they brought dope through and all that kind of stuff. So that's really the book in a nutshell, and all came from my upbringing, my childhood, and then my experience as a cop.
It's awesome. And the name Interceptor, just because of the work that you were doing, like theoretically intercepting bad guys and narcotics.
Correct. Yeah. So we the book actually, or the name, came from a friend, because my team, when we were in the thick of it, we were on a series called NRA Life of Duty. So the NRA had this Life of Duty program that they were doing, where they would highlight military and law enforcement teams. And our team was highlighted for that work out there. And Rick Stewart, good friend of mine, who was running like filming and editing at that time for them, came up with that name for that particular series. And then as I wrote the book, I had a couple different names that I had picked, and I wasn't sure yet. And I was trying to get the vibe, and feel something that, because you're trying to get something that's kind of attention grabbing, appealing, whatever, and kind of unique. And as I worked through that, Rick and I were talking, and I was like, dude, well, why don't I just call it Interceptors? Are you cool with that? Because like you came up with that for this other thing. And he was like, oh, dude, I'd be honored if you called it that. So and it just fit, because that's essentially what we were doing. We were out there intercepting loads as they came through, or intercepting bad guys. So yeah, that's it.
That's awesome. That's how I explain interdiction to like the civilian that asks questions. I'm like, well, theoretically, I'm like very sports oriented, but I'm like, I'm a defensive back.
Right.
Someone from point A is trying to get some load to point B. So like, imagine a quarterback throwing a load to the wide receiver, and hopefully, I have the enough ability to intercept it as it's coming by me.
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
so that's why when I saw the book, I was like, man, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
that's a very unique but super accurate description of what I guess you were doing, what interdiction guys do in general.
Yeah, for sure.
So born and raised in Phoenix.
Born and raised in Phoenix, South Mountain and Central Ave, which I know that doesn't mean anything to anybody outside of Phoenix, but that is about as far south as you can get, just before you hit what's known as South Mountain. And so in the very south part of Phoenix, Section 8 housing with a single mom for first part of my childhood. My dad bounced at like 4 years old when I was about 4. And so grew up kind of in that area and Section 8 housing, obviously being kind of a more poor area and high Hispanic gang population there. So we had a lot of Hispanic gangs in that area. We also had, there were some Crips and some Bloods as the 80s rolled through and they came over from Cali. We had a lot of Cali influence being that close to LA. By growing up in that environment, I just witnessed a whole lot of crap. I witnessed drive-bys, witnessed stabbings. I got shot at. I was 12-ish, 13, right around that age when I got shot. And they were shooting at my friend, but I happened to be with him. So they were kind of shooting at both of us because if anybody has grown up in those circumstances, you understand that like these are dudes that I grew up with. A couple of them became gangsters. And then you become guilty by association because you're friends with these guys. But I wasn't in the gang with them. They got into that. And then you're hanging out with them. And if stuff pops off, you're part of it. So a lot of that kind of stuff going on all the way up into my freshman year. And then my mom wanted to get me out of there. So we moved out to a smaller town kind of east of Phoenix that was a way less populated farming area.
When you were siblings or anything like that?
No, only child, man. I had cousins and stuff, but I was it.
When you were, I guess, growing up, mom have to work too, so you're home a lot by yourself?
Yeah, I was a latchkey kid. So I'd come home from school with the key around my neck to get in and let myself in, make myself my food, do my homework, do whatever chores mom wanted me to do. And a lot of times, when it was mom's work days, she was home, but she was sleeping because she was working nights. So she'd be sleeping till like 4 or 5, much like we do in the cop world. And then she'd get up, go to work, and she'd be gone at night, which also lent itself to problems for me as a teenage boy because mom was gone at night and night was when trouble happens. Right. So that could be problematic too. But yeah, a lot of alone time as a kid and growing up in that neighborhood. And so really, like I said, my friends really became my brothers growing up.
Was what kind of work did mom do?
She was post office for, man, I want to say 34 years. She was at the post office. Yeah.
And then
so
Dad?
go
ahead.
I was going to say then she which kind of got us out of that situation, right? And her getting that post office job we were able to get better housing. And then I eventually had a stepdad that came into the picture. They bought some land out in that farming area, got some acreage, moved out there. And dad was, man, I saw dad a couple times through my life growing up, but really non-existent in my life. And he hung out with OMGs and I had some cousins that were involved in that shit too. It's a weird dynamic at having a criminal element in some of the family and then having cops in some of the family. And so dad he wasn't in the picture much at all.
That's impressive. Growing up in that dynamic, so many negative influences that you're still able to stay away from it. How do you think you accomplished that?
Well, because I had this weird dichotomy going on where my mom's side of the family, my grandpa became my father figure and they lived about a mile down the road. But my mom wanted to make it on her own, right? That's why we were in Section 8 housing. So she wanted to do her own thing and be on her own. And so we lived in that housing, but I had the grandparents close by. And actually, my dad's parents, they were close by too. They were probably a few miles away. And so I actually saw my grandparents on my dad's side more than I ever saw him. And then I saw my grandparents on my mom's side, and my grandparents on my mom's side actually became essentially my babysitters. So on those days where mom would say like, hey, I'm going to work at whatever time, you're going to go over to grandma and grandpa's and stay there, so that you're not home alone at night, right? And so I'd go over there and I'd be around my grandpa, and he was an old Texan World War II vet, hunt, fish, all that stuff. My grandma was a homemaker, and they were your typical. Both of them World War II vets. They met in the war. They were in Manila together.
Who's tired of beard oil that overpromises and underdelivers? We have partnered with Semper Suave, the best oil in the game. Keeps you looking great on duty and off duty. Kind of hides my gray a little bit. Keeps me looking a little fresh and clean in between trips to the barbershop. Not only is it military owned, but it's also law enforcement owned. So we are full supporters of Semper Suave. And if you want to support them too, use the code BEYOND15 for 15% off. They love us. They're going to love you just the same.
And then when that got overrun, they got split up and they got back together stateside. And he was a small business owner. So a lot of good influence on that side of the family. So again, I had that weird dichotomy of having friends and the streets pulling me one direction, but having family on my mom's side pulling me another direction. And ultimately in my early teens, my mom kind of caught on that I'm right on the fence, man. I could go either way. Cause I had friends that had already been prosecuted for capital crimes.
Wow.
I had friends that were getting into, so when I hit my sophomore year, I had friends that had been shot. I had a friend that had been killed already, but in a gang thing. One of my uncles was locked up, and he was a long time lockup guy. Like, he had a real low number, had a lot of pool in prison. So I could have gone either way, man. And I think my mom understood that. So she got me out of that environment. And when I moved out of that environment as a sophomore in high school, the new school that I went to, I got into sports, and that, I think that kind of, kept me on task and kept me out of trouble as I went through and finished high school.
When you moved from, I guess, the lower income to now a property with land and stuff, was that almost like a culture shock as a teenager?
Dude, it was total culture shock. So one of the first questions I asked my mom was like, I was like, Mom, how do I get to school? Like, there's no city bus. Because I was used to walking down a couple blocks, jumping on the city bus, which was a whole different adventure, and taking that for about a half hour up to the high school I was going to. And so I was like, how do I get around? And she's like, well, you're going to walk, like essentially about 3/4 of a mile that way to a bus stop, and then a school bus will pick you up. And that was all foreign to me. And so, yeah, culture shock there. And then the cool thing was, though, like in the summertime, all those farms around there hired all the high school kids, and we all knew each other, right? My graduating class was like 42 people. So we all knew each other. Families all knew each other. The sports were real big, right? Small town, Friday night lights kind of stuff. And so it was like a big family. And then I would work in the summertime to make money, and the farms all hired us. And so I worked out in the fields and did that stuff right along with the migrants and stuff. And so definitely culture shock from city to that, but really just kind of transitioned fairly easily because the culture was the same. It was the Mexican culture. So I went from a Mexican barrio to a town that was heavy Hispanic influence. And so I went from Mexican culture to Mexican culture. It was just, I wasn't getting jumped, shot at, all that kind of shit.
Right. When did that working with the migrant workers, did it just give you a different perspective of the, I guess, the Hispanic culture?
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, because you're when you're working alongside, other people like that, and you get to know those people, and you get to know the struggles of their family, right, and all this stuff going on, you all become kind of close. And so just getting to see that side of it, I think that gave me a huge advantage as I got into law enforcement, in how I dealt with people, how I treated people, how I understood people. And so definitely a cool experience for me. And then just the appreciation that you have as you go through life and kind of, start to do better and better for yourself. And you look back and you say, man, I was working alongside people that were just working their tails off and making pennies on the dollar and making it work. And then sometimes, you look around you and you're like, oh man, why can't I have a Lambo, and why can't I have a mansion? And then you look back and you're like, dude, I'm just happy I got walls around me, because some of these people I was working with didn't even have that,
Yeah, that's insane to think of. Like, to be a migrant working, so you're coming from another country to make such minimal amount of money, but I can't imagine how rough it is in their country if they're willing to make that kind of sacrifice to do it here.
Right. And then again, getting to know that person on a personal level, and really the struggles they deal with, and like you're talking about, having family, hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles away, and they're working their tails off, but they're living very, very sparsely so that they can send as much as possible back to their family to take care of them. And it's just, again, it's humbling, and it kind of gives you perspective, as you move forward.
Yeah, I guess I never realized how many migrant workers there were until I became a cop. And we have north of me is Michigan, and so there's tons of migrant workers that come up there and that do the same thing. They're all living in like a 1-bedroom house all summer, and there's like 6 or 7 of them, and then trying to make as much money to send it back home, and or make it just so then when they get back home they have excess money. What in school you said you got into sports? What sports were you playing?
Football, basketball were my two main. I did baseball a little bit. I played baseball actually all growing up until high school. And then once I got into high school, my mom had never really allowed me to play football because she was worried about the head injury stuff. So she was a little bit ahead of her time in that, I guess. But then when I got into high school, she was like, okay, go ahead. And so played football and basketball was always, I always loved that sport. Because, dude, I can tell you, like growing up on the South Side, some of the dudes I grew up with were in 6th grade. These dudes were dunking it, and just, I mean, they were ball players. Of course, they didn't go on to play ball because most of them went to prison and shit. But, it's just, they were good ball players. So I grew up playing ball in that atmosphere. And it was funny because I'm not a tall guy, but so I was a point guard, but my ball handling skills, because I had grown up in that environment, playing ball in that environment. One of my coaches was a college player and now a coach, and he came over and he's like, where in the hell did you learn to box out? Because I've never seen anybody box out like that. Like, I was violent in my boxing out. I said, bro, when you're playing with the dudes I was playing with, like, you got to hold your game,
Did you any scholarships or anything in the college after high school?
No, I didn't. I ended up, I did all state 1 year, and but I was a knucklehead, dude. I was a hard head, so I was hard to coach, no doubt. And I thought I, knew everything. And of course, growing up a little rough, I kind of had a chip on my shoulder as a youngster, just trying to figure it out. And then, I went to a community college right after high school because my mom was like, you got to do something. You're not just sitting around the house. But dude, college was just not my jam. So I was in there and I was like, not feeling it, Mom. And so I kind of stopped that. And she's like, well, you're doing something, right? So that's when I started talking to a Marine Corps recruiter and started going down that road. And at the same time, I was dating my then girlfriend, now wife, and she ended up, we were both 19. She ended up pregnant. I don't know how that happened, but she she ended up pregnant, and I had a life choice in front of me. And I was, again, I was in talks with a Marine Corps recruiter at that time. And then I had been applying at the different agencies, and actually Pinal County was the first one to call me in and say, hey, we want to offer you a job. And I was 20 years old at that time. And so at 20 years old, I got hired on with the SO, and my daughter had just been born prior to that. So we had our first kid. We were both 20 years old, and that was it, man. I knew, I wasn't going to make a killing with government work, but I knew I'd have a steady salary, and I knew that I would have good benefits. And that's really what I needed, is stability and benefits. And that was it. And 30 something years later, here I am.
Yeah, life started fast and young for you, man.
Oh, dude, it did. Yeah, I learned a lot very early on.
You talked about you being like a hard-headed or a knucklehead, but do you think some of that was being so independent as a kid growing up? So you know your own ways, and so now you're someone trying to coach you or teach you, you're already kind of stuck in your ways because you've already been doing so much stuff independently.
Yeah, and I do think that had a lot to do with it, that because I kind of understood that, and I've done things and seen things that none of you people have seen or done, and ain't nobody telling me what to do, right? And I'm very independent in that sense, because I kind of had to take care of myself. Again, no siblings, right? And so it was fix your own food, so you got to figure that out, and getting my homework done and keeping my grades where my mom was happy with them, and just doing all that stuff. And quite honestly, man, when you're young and you're in that environment, you don't give a shit about prison. Like, it's looked at as a badge of honor. So you're kind of like, whatever, dude. If I go to jail, I go to jail. If I go to prison, I go to prison. I'll get out, and then, I'll walk the neighborhood like a big dog. So that mindset is just crazy, right? Especially looking back, you look back at that and you're like, that is such like the wrong way to approach it. But that's the way it gets kind of programmed into you, man.
Is that almost passed down like through friends and I guess older people in the neighborhood, like that type of culture?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because when you like, I can remember when dudes got out of prison and would walk the neighborhood, they were like revered. Like, oh, that's Flacco, man. He just got out. He did a 10-year stint and now he's out. And so Flacco would walk where he wants. He could pull up to any house and here's your alcohol, or whatever you want, you're taken care of. And so if you're growing up in that environment and you're watching that take place, then naturally you're like, well, I want to be respected like that. So that becomes
That's
a thing.
interesting, man. I guess I've never heard that perspective or like seen it at all. That's I don't know, interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's
With
crazy.
when you're going through these hiring process, did anything of your youth come up? I mean, being associated with gang members or those types of things?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have to disclose all this, right? And you have to go through your background and stuff. So all of that comes up as discussion. But again, when you're, from my perspective, I was never like in the gang, because a lot of things have to take place. And again, people who don't understand, like I'm sure Phoenix PD would call me a gang associate at that point, right? Because I'm hanging out with gangsters. But if you go back in time a few years, these are my friends that I grew up for years with, and we were little tiny kids playing stickball, playing soccer, playing this, that, whatever. We kind of came up through elementary school, and as you get to the because you grow up quick in that kind of environment, and as you get into like 5th and 6th grade, that's where friends would start getting involved in that crap, right? So 5th, 6th grade, they're starting to hang out with gangsters, talk to gangsters, that kind of stuff. And then they get caught up in that stuff a little bit. And then, me and a couple other friends were never involved in that. But I had like my one best friend growing up, his brothers were all in car clubs. So they had lowriders and that type of stuff. And so we would hang out with those guys. And so there was this weird, almost gentleman's agreement. Like, you would have a gang in the neighborhood and you would have dudes that were in a car club in that neighborhood. And the gang would not mess with the car club. They showed them mutual respect, and the car club didn't get involved in the gang stuff. And so if you were with one of those crews, you really didn't get messed with by the other crew, even though you're occupying the same space. And so there's a lot of just these weird dynamics that, unless you walk people through it like this, they just wouldn't understand. So as I got into my backgrounds and stuff, kind of explaining all that and giving them the behind the scenes. This is how it happened, and now I'm here. And I really hadn't done anything crazy illegal because I wasn't involved in that side of it.
Before we go into your law enforcement career, do you associate or have any type of friends from back then that kind of went down, I guess, the negative route and came back to being a good person?
Yeah, actually, one of my buddies that we played soccer with all the time, a dude named Zal, he went in, and I think he killed 2 people from another gang. So when I was just getting into law enforcement, so it was just before I got hired with the SO, he shot and killed 2 guys that jumped him. He was at a house party, and they jumped him, and he pulled out a gun and killed him. And he went in, and he just got out. Let's see, we're in 25, so he just got out last year in 24. And so for my whole career, he's been locked up for that crime, and just got out. And now, and I haven't talked to him personally, but my best friend growing up is in contact with him and has been keeping me up to date. Like, hey, Zal's out. He's doing this. He's doing that. He's doing good. He's trying to live the straight life. And I was just, you sit here and you think about stuff like that. One of the things that I was thinking about just randomly was like, man, when he went in, like, cassette tapes were like the technology, right? And
Yeah.
he's coming out now, and we're carrying these computers in our hands, carrying these things,
Right.
and so how much the world has changed since he's been locked up, and he's trying to make it all work.
Yeah, I mean, you're coming out. It's like I don't know, like a fast forward in time. You know what I'm saying? You go back. It's like, I mean, technology moves so fast. It's like the Stone Age now. You talk about cassette tapes, and it's crazy.
Yeah,
but he's doing well, as far as you know.
Yeah, he's
That's
staying
awesome.
on track, man, and just trying to. I think a lot of it has to do with just figuring out how to function in this world, and not be in a world where they're telling you what to do all the time, telling you where to do it, how to do it, all that kind of stuff, and coming out into a regular world functioning, and then not getting caught back up in the BS, right? Because now, just like I told you, we looked at guys. So he's a revered guy. If he goes back to the block, they're gonna be like, "Oh shit, this OG's here," and man, it's easy to get caught right back up in that crap.
Yeah, that's what I say. Like, so when he comes out, is he? I don't know. Like, how's the gang look at him? Like, or is he required to keep, I guess, being a gang member, or is he like,
No, I
like
think
do his time now, and you're like, okay, now you can be like, try
I
to be a
think,
good
dude,
citizen?
I don't know. Like, I'm not in it, obviously, right?
Right.
I'm not
Yeah, no, I'm
living it,
just
but outside looking in, I think what happens is just like it happens to us in cops, or in the cop world. I felt this happen as I went through my career, and especially as when I was at the end of it, right? So I had done 32 years with the SO, and my last few years with the SO, there were young guys that I had never worked the streets with. They didn't know the stuff I had done. I didn't know what they were doing. So I think that happens in that culture too, right? So many generations of gangsters had passed that he's coming out, and they'll know his name and they'll know who he is, and they'll show him respect. But I don't think there's any expectation that, hey, you got to do your thing.
that makes sense. I mean, yeah, I guess he already gave up 30 plus years to the gang. Like, I think that you've kind of done your time, I guess,
Right.
with them, like, or for them,
Yeah.
or however you want to look at it. When you got into police work, what were your aspirations? Did you just want to work patrol, or do you guys have to go to the jail there first?
We don't have to go to the jail. I did start in the jail. That's where I spent the first probably just under a year of my career was in the jail, and then I went out to the road. Honestly, man, my aspirations, this will sound kind of corny to some, but I just wanted to be a good cop, dude, and have a good name at the end of my career. And so and I'm a worker, man. So like I'll outwork everybody. So anytime, and I'm one of those guys when they tell me, man, you can't do that, I'm like, oh, okay, it's on now, right? So I was just one of those guys that was constantly looking for work, man. I wanted to get work. I understood the gang world, so I was comfortable in that. I understood the dope world. I was comfortable in that. So I was kind of gravitated towards that. And honestly, when I first got into it, I don't think I had plan in mind. I just wanted to work, right? So just cut me loose and let me work. And I don't even know what that looks like. And then as I got into the job, I started seeing like, okay, this is what that is, and this is what that is, and oh yeah, I want to do that. And so like SWAT, like, oh, I'm gonna do that. That looks fun. And so I want to get over there, and then I want to, work around gangsters. So I want to go after the gangs and stuff because I understand that culture. I'm comfortable in that culture, and I think I can operate well. So that was kind of my aspirations. And then as I went along, the SWAT theme came to be. I did get into that, and then back then we got recruited into narcs, and so I think my background and my street style, or my style of how I policed, caught the attention of some of our old school narcs, and back then it was a recruitment, kind of like a training day thing, except you didn't have to smoke PCP. And so they pulled me aside and they're like, "Hey man, we want you to come in and work undercover." And so I kind of went that route. And then as I promoted, so I was in it as just a street cop and doing narcs and stuff for about 5-ish years. And then I decided, me and a buddy decided we're going to test for sergeant. And quite frankly, dude, every time I tested for promotion, I would look around and I'd be like, I'm not working for that fucking idiot. And I got to get ahead of that, right? And so I've got to stay ahead of these idiots so that I can control my destiny a little bit. And so I think it was right at 5 years that I tested for, and then I promoted to sergeant, and then had a bunch of different assignments as a sergeant because I was doing that for about 10 years. SWAT was always a collateral duty to that. And then after 10 years, promoted to lieutenant, and spent 6 years as a lieutenant, and then from lieutenant jumped up to second in command to Sheriff Lamb when he took office. Did that for 8 years, and that took me to the end, man. That brought me to the 32-year mark, and I really did not have chief of police on my radar or on my want to do list. And but this opportunity came up, and it was a really good opportunity for me to step away from one and into something new and kind of create a softer landing for myself as I get ready to exit law enforcement, because I went from a bigger agency to a smaller agency, and then being the chief of that agency allowed me to kind of jump off the fast moving train onto a little slower train before I get off at the station.
Gotcha. Would after 32 years, are you fully vested? And is it the same pension or is it different pensions?
Different pension. So I retired out of our public safety pension here in Arizona. So I was an old school, what they call tier 1 retirement. So I was vested at 20. So I got extra time and got my retirement and punched out of that retirement, and now working on a second income and putting into a second retirement that's a state retirement. And I'll have to do 5 years to get vested in that, which is probably in my mind like where I'm going to max out anyways. Like I have some specific goals for the PD that I want to get done, and I think that's going to be a 3 to 5 year project as they grow. And when I hit that 5 year mark, one of my projects is preparing one of my current commanders to take the helm, and so prepping him to do that, and then I'll ride off into the sunset and be done.
When you, I guess we'll backtrack a little bit. When you came in and you started working in the jail, how did you like that? And do you think that should be a step for all law enforcement, or not so much?
I don't know if like it is the right word, but I mean, it was a good introduction to government work, right? So if you've never been a government employee, so for a young, 20-year-old, I think it is the right thing because it puts you in more of a controlled environment, right? So much more control inside the jail. You're learning how to deal with people in there, right? You're controlling their lives much like you would on the street. So I think for street cops, if you have young cops that are in their early 20s going out to work the streets, I think the jail would absolutely help the profession and help them, because it gives you a lot of skills in there, and it also sets you up for the street because you start building your reputation in there, and you're dealing with the same dudes, right? So you start building your reputation in there, and then when you hit the street, they kind of already know you, so you don't have to do that all over again. Depending obviously on where you're working.
I give anyone that works in a jail as a correction officer or a prison or whatever a lot of admiration, because I don't necessarily know if I could have done that. And if that was a step to be a cop, I don't think I could have made it, because I just look at it, I'm like, man, I don't want to be locked up for 8 or 12 hours. Like, that's completely independent of who I'm working with or who I'm dealing with. That's just literally being locked up for 8 to 12 hours, like not having that freedom to, as a cop, kind of come and go as you go, like as you're working, you can go wherever the heck you want. And in jail, not so much.
Yeah, and I think that's why I say young cops, because I think if you don't know, right, you don't know what you don't know. So if you're getting into the profession and an agency says, hey, your first step is here, and then you go there, again, you don't know what you don't know. So you go, you work that, you learn some stuff, and then you go out. And once you start working the road, you're going to see like, oh yeah, I like this better because of the freedom to move around. You're doing a lot more stuff. You're not locked down in that facility. I agree with you. But there's also people that is exactly what they want for their career, right? We have at the SO, we have lifelong detention officers that have been in their whole career and, have risen up through the ranks, and some of them are running the jail now, and they have no issue with that. And it's, I guess I liken it to working at any business, right? You go into Google and you're locked into a building for however long doing your thing. So, yeah.
No, that's true. No, I guess that perspective, but I think I look at it going from a cop to go to do that.
Oh yeah.
And I never did that. I'm like, I don't know, man, if I could do that, that'd be a little rough.
That would be rough. And I think too, that there's a, the people in there view you differently, right? Because the easiest way to explain it is bad guys in the jail understand that a street cop can put charges on them, right? And that's not so much true for the detention officers or corrections officers working in there necessarily. They, like, as an individual, I can't say, oh, you know what, dude, I'm charging you with this, and here's the paperwork, fill it out, get it, slap a charge on you, right? So it's not the same process. So you'll see with bad guys, like if I go in the jail as a deputy and they know I'm a street cop, they're like, oh, whoa, hold up. This dude's a cop. So, hey, man.
So jailers get a little more grief than a deputy would, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you promoted early in your career, so you're 25 years old. You're a supervisor now. With that, can you stay within gangs and stuff, or when you get promotion, do you have to go wherever there's an opening?
You go where there's an opening, and typically speaking, you're going back to patrol, which is what I did. So I was in Narcs. I promoted out, went to patrol. But I knew I had a very smart narcotics sergeant, old school dude, and I was not going to take the promotion. I was going to tell him to pass me over, and that I'm good. Because I actually didn't anticipate doing as good as I did on the test. And so I scored number 1, and they were like, hey, you're up. And I'm like, shit, now I got to make a decision, right? So I go to my sergeant. I'm like, hey, I'm staying, man. I'm having way too much fun. I love this kind of work. I'm not going. He sat me down. He's like, no, you're not, dude. I'm not going to let that happen. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, no. He says, this doesn't happen very often, right? Like these opportunities for you to move up like this don't happen that often, especially as early on as you're having it happen. And he says, you can always come back to this as a sergeant or a lieutenant or whatever, right? He says, but you may not get the opportunity again like it is presented to you right now. So he says, you're going to take that promotion. I'm not going to let you stay. If you don't take it, you're not staying here. And I was like, oh, shit, okay. So he kind of helped me make that decision, and it was the smartest move ever, dude, because he was completely right. I ended up coming back as the Narc Sergeant later on in my sergeant tenure.
When you are a sergeant, are those the only two where you're as a sergeant, you're in a supervisor role, or did you bounce around a little bit?
Yeah, no, I bounced around a little bit. So promoted to sergeant, was out on the road as a street sergeant for a bit. Did a few years of that, and then a opening came up for training sergeant, and I'm ADD bad. Like I need change every like 3 or 4 years or I'm going crazy. And so an opening for training sergeant came up, and I was like, I don't really want to work day shift, but good opportunity. And then what I also saw that nobody else was paying attention to, I was like, wait a minute. If I'm in charge of training, that means I know about all the training. And that means that I'll have opportunities to connect myself with training. And so it ended up being a great move for me because of that. I was able to not only help everybody in the agency get the stuff that they needed, but I was able to connect myself with, just network. And I've always been huge on the network piece, just network with those training pieces and make those connections, which actually helped me all the way through my career because I made solid connections, a solid network, and a good base group of other law enforcement professionals that and I can tell you when I put in for this chief's job, the my town manager that hired me, he's like, dude, is there anybody you don't know? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he says, because I've talked to so and so who has zero connection to our area, but they know you and they know of you and they know how you are, and they told me if I don't hire you, I'm stupid. And so you never know, those connections you make in that network you make. So I did that in that training position, worked that for a little bit. And then from there, the narcotics position came available. And the sheriff at that time put me back in narcs. I ran that for a bit. Then we had a change of sheriffs. That sheriff coming in wanted to stand up a motor unit. And I had a reputation of a dude that could fix shit or start shit. And so he pulled me in and he's like, hey, I'm taking you out of narcs and I want you to stand up our first motor unit. So I became a motor and stood up our first motor unit and kind of got that thing functioning. And then I rode that out, pun intended, until I promoted to lieutenant. And then when I promoted to lieutenant, they put me, they essentially created a spot where I was a catch-all for, I had SWAT. I was a SWAT commander, so I took command of the team at that point. So I moved from TL to commander. And then I had narcotics. I had our anti-smuggling crew. And then they would throw in things every once in a while, like, we don't know where to put this, so it's with you for right now. And then it's over here. So I'd catch some of that peripheral stuff.
How many kids do you have now?
3.
So going through all these different positions from narcs to SWAT team, is your SWAT team full-time or part-time?
We're part-time collateral.
Okay. All these different roles, how are you managing home life with a wife and 3 kids?
Not the greatest, I don't think. I tell my wife all the time now that she doesn't understand, nor do my kids. I think, especially my oldest daughter's 33, my middle daughter's 22, and then my son's 17. So I still have a son at home. So we spread them apart too, right? So they all saw a different version of dad, a different part of dad's career. My oldest daughter and my wife, I tell them like you don't understand the appreciation I have for you guys sticking it out with me, because I would say the first decade, if not 15 years of my career, I was an asshole, dude. I was tough to live with. I was, because I was all about the job. I was like all in on the job. And so I was doing a lot of hours. I was doing a lot of the high speed, low drag shit, the narcotics stuff. You're living a double life. So it's, it just doesn't, it's not conducive to a good family life. And then the people we were dealing with down here in Arizona are not necessarily very nice people. And so, when you're talking about cartel connected people, those are tough to work, because then your family has to do things different, act different. So it was tough all through that time frame. And I think, again, each one of my kids got a different view of dad, different version of dad. And I really thank God that it was my wife, dude. My wife held the family together and put up with a lot of shit from me. And that's why, now I am like, every time I see her, I'm like, God, I love you, for sticking with me.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot in law enforcement. And the first 10 so years, like a young cop is so dedicated to the profession that a lot of their personal life gets put on the back burner. And I tell everyone, you need a strong spouse. You need a strong backbone at home in order to make everything work in this profession. So
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of, I mean, I didn't realize it. And as time went on, you start to realize it more and more. But, you know, as a young cop, you're not thinking, I guess, like that. You're thinking more of like the dedication to the job than trying
Yeah.
to
Well,
balance.
and dude, you know this, you've been through it. What I realized, I think, at the back end of my career, and I'm not saying this in a bad way. It's how the career is, man. It's how this machine works. You pour in your life, and literally, like, I've had friends killed, you know, right, doing the job, and you pour in your whole heart and soul into this thing, and it chews you up, spits you out, and doesn't give a shit about you at the end. And I don't mean that in a way like that nobody cares about you in this career, because there's plenty of leaders out there, right, that care about their people and all that stuff. But the machine, dude, the machine just keeps on going, and it doesn't care about you, no matter how much you put into it.
Yeah, and that, yeah, like I completely agree with what you're saying. It's not the people within the job; it's just a government entity that you're just a number for the government entity. That's not your chief or the mayor or whoever. It's literally
Right.
they need to keep that thing functioning. So when you're gone, they're just refilling you with someone else. Like
Right.
and it's not. It's nothing, I guess, derogatory to the people running it. There's no other way to run it to make it go run seamlessly. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, and that's what I always look at. I used to, you know, look at it as like I do love this profession mainly
Yeah.
because I love the people in the profession. You know, like the
Right.
profession doesn't give a shit about you, like as a whole, as a
Right.
government entity. But the
Right.
people in the profession are some of the most selfless, amazing people in the world. So
Oh,
I
absolutely,
try to
dude.
like differentiate that, but it's really hard to like
Yeah.
explain it in great detail.
Yeah, and it's tough to, for people who haven't done it, it's tough to explain, you know, what we're trying to say here. And again, if you go back to my book, that was a driving factor, because I wanted to highlight all, because dude, I seriously, I saw people do some of the most heroic shit and cool shit, and just, I mean, just solid cops, and I wanted to show other people, like, look at the stuff that goes on when you're sleeping, these people are doing, just to be that protector, right, and to hold that line, and yeah, it's a weird, just a weird thing, man, and it's very hard to explain. Like, you and I understand it, and we know what we mean, but it's hard to explain.
Yeah, I'm assuming other cops will understand it, but if you're a civilian,
Yeah.
you're probably like, these guys have no idea what they're talking about.
Right. Yeah.
What was your favorite position that you held so far, besides the chief
Narc.
position? We'll
Narc.
take that out of there.
Narc Sergeant, dude. No doubt. Yeah. Narc Sergeant was the best, because I was a working sergeant. So I was a case carrying sergeant. I had CIs, all that stuff that the detectives were doing. But the beauty of being the sergeant was I got to kind of cherry pick a little. So, you know, if it was some crackhead ass CI, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not handling that one. That's detective. That's yours. You got that one. And then I worked undercover as a sergeant too. So I did, you know, some undercover cases, the hand to hands, and some of the wire cases and stuff. And that's, dude, that was some of the funnest. And I think it was funnest for me because it's so awesome just to beat them at their own game, especially like they didn't even see it coming, right? And I talked to another guy about this, and I kind of told him a story about an undercover case that I worked, and it was funny because he kind of put that out there as we were talking. He put that little clip out there, and a lot of people were like, it was viral, right, by those terms. But people were hating, man. They were like, you're a psychopath, and you're this, and you're that. How could you do that? And I'm like, they fucking know, like, this guy was a drug dealer, right? Like, why am I the bad guy in this? But that's what made it fun to me, is that I was in their world, beating them at their own game, and they didn't even see it coming until the cuffs were already on, and we're like, boom, got you, sucker, and we're taking all your shit.
I love the interdiction aspect of police work for that reason, because these individuals are planning weeks, months, years to beat you. And I have a traffic stop at 7 to 10 minutes to beat you. And if I can do that, I don't care what you have in your car. I just beat you at a mental game. And like,
Yeah.
that's what's rewarding for me. It's not the fact that like you have 1 kilo or 30 kilos. It's the fact that
Right.
you prepared to beat me, and I was able to break it down in 7 to 10 minutes and beat you.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly. You do all these things to make sure you don't get caught, and then boom, I caught you.
Yep. That's the most rewarding thing to me about it.
Yeah. Yep.
I know that you talked about how you worked your ass off for the first 10, 15 years of your profession. Were you doing anything outside of work to kind of keep you more level-headed and not go crazy?
Yeah, I don't know how level-headed it kept me, but like I said, growing up, exposed, to my grandpa and my uncles and aunts, hunting and fishing, and so that was my thing, man. Outdoors, getting outdoors, like my wife and I. Even when we were a young couple, with our first daughter, we would do a lot of that. Do a lot of camping, do a lot of hunting, fishing. And I kind of carried that forward with the hunting, fishing piece. I still do a lot of that did that with all of my kids. And that's still kind of my thing. And especially once I got introduced to archery hunting, and then once I got introduced to archery hunting for bull elk, I was like, oh my God, this is like, there is nothing like that. I've killed a couple bulls with a bow, and there is nothing like being face to face with, 1,000-pound animal that's screaming and peeing and trying to just kill and breed and do all that stuff, and you're that close to them, and you get to stick an arrow in them. And so those are kind of my outlets. And then the fishing thing is because the funny thing is, I'm introvert if you look at the definition, where like this thing will just drain me, right? The thing that we're doing here, a podcast will drain me because I'm talking to you, I'm interacting with you, we're having this whole conversation. And so fishing for me is that it's almost like staring at a TV and just vegging out, right? So you just get on a lake and you get your line in there and you just kind of chill and, hang out. And so that's a real relaxer for me. And then I think the hunting is more of that. It's what we do, right? We hunt people in this profession, and I think it's just an extension of that, and it gives me another way to. Because same thing, man. When I downed my first elk, I was like, yeah, like you got the better nose, you got the better eyesight. You spend your whole life to not get caught by a predator, and I got you.
Yeah, no, I'm not a hunter. I'm a fisher, but I'm very introverted. So, like you just said, when I travel to teach, like I'm exhausted. Like 8 hours up there, 6 hours, whatever it is, standing around talking.
Yeah.
Like even after this, I can do about 2 podcasts a day, and after that, like I'm spent. Like it's
Right.
An hour of talking is I don't know. It takes everything out of me for some reason.
And
It's the weirdest thing.
people that don't do this, that aren't, so if there's an introvert listening to this and does the stuff that we do, because I do the teaching too, so I know what you're saying. And I, like last week, I was teaching up in Green Bay, and when you go home or back to the hotel that night, like I could literally just sit in my bed and not do it, just sit there. And it's like a recharge, right? Like I don't want to hear any noise. I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to sit here and hear quiet or the ringing in my ear from all the shooting.
Yeah, like when I'm with I call my wife driving back to the hotel, knowing that when I get back to the hotel, I don't want to do anything. And there's times that I didn't eat all day, and I just go back and I'll pass out like that, and I don't eat, and then I'm like, I wake up 2 or 3 in the morning, and I'm like starving, and there's like nothing open, but like it's just, I don't know, man. It really kicks my ass, man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
When did you get into teaching? At what point of your profession?
Dude, it was early on. I really felt strongly about relaying the stuff that I knew, helping other cops, because I kind of saw back then, this was 90s, right? So this was, I think I started teaching, I got hired with the county in 93, and I think it was 97 when I started teaching my first classes that were law enforcement related, teaching at the academy, doing that kind of stuff, dipping my toe in, and doing some shadowing with some more experienced instructors, and then kind of just making my way as time went on. And so yeah, I've been teaching since like 97, so almost 30 years.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
With your position now, what is your ultimate goal?
Just leave everything better than I got it would be the easy answer. Like I just like this Chiefs job, right? Moving into that PD, great guys and gals, cool little town. and I just want to leave it better. So I'm looking, like every day, I'm looking at what can I do to make it better for them, easier for them? What can I do to make their jobs easier? How can I support them? Just that type of stuff. And that's really been my goal, I think, the last decade, as I was in leadership positions, especially when Mark promoted me up to his second in command. I understood when that happened that I was moving into a much more influential position and a lot more powerful to be able to cut through red tape and get shit done. Like example is I was a SWAT guy, right? So I left. So I promoted from being the SWAT commander to the chief deputy. And so the lieutenant that stepped in and took the SWAT team over, I was like, well, guess who controls the budget now? This guy, former SWAT guy. Guess who's getting some love? SWAT guys. And so I knew what I had needed for equipment, what they had needed for equipment for years. And here I am in the position to be able to positively affect that. And not only affect that right now, but develop leaders that set up kind of a legacy of pushing that forward in a positive direction. So that's kind of been my goal.
How long before you got the position did you know Sheriff Lamb?
Well, he had worked at the agency, I think 4 years, and I had a couple of interactions with him. So because he was a deputy and I was a lieutenant at that point, and so had a couple interactions with him. And the most interaction I had with him is he tested for SWAT at one point, and our test is a pass or fail at every stage, right? So you have to pass each stage to stay in it. He failed a stage, so I pulled him in the room and I said, "Hey, bro, you failed. This is where you failed. This is what you need to fix. You're welcome to come back and test again." He's like, "Yeah, I screwed that up. I'll fix it, and I'm going to be back." I was like, "All right, cool." That was the longest conversation we had until he sat down to interview me for the job. And so didn't really know him, knew who he was. And when he started to run for sheriff through a mutual friend, he reached out to a friend in common and said, "Hey, dude, could you tell Matt that I'm running for sheriff and I would be interested in having him apply for my second in command job if he's interested." And so I said, okay. And then when he won the primary, he reached out and said, "I'd like to sit down with you and talk to you." And he kind of let me know, he goes, "Look, dude, you're my front runner. But I have to go through this process to kind of, for my mind, I have to talk to a few people to see, solidify for me who I want." And so we went through this interview process, which was, it was more like a sit down. It was me and my wife and him and his wife. And he kind of laid out his mission, goals, objectives, and his values. And I was like, "Bro, I'm all in. If you offer the job, I'm there." And he's like, "Well, it's yours." So that was it, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
When he ran for sheriff, he only had 4 years of law enforcement experience prior to doing that?
No, he had 4 years with the county. So he started his law enforcement career actually at a Native American reservation.
Okay.
Cops there, right? And so he got started late in life. So he started at, I think it was like 34 that he jumped into law enforcement, was working for them, knew he wanted to run for sheriff in the future in Pinal County because he had Pinal County ties, like family ties and stuff. So left the reservation cops, came to us, worked as a deputy, wanted to, see how the agency worked. He told his FDO, his first FDO, he's, "I'm gonna run for sheriff." And they're like, "Whatever, dude." And so, he's like, "No, I'm serious." And they're like, "Yeah, whatever, dude. Just, you got these DORs that you got to complete for today. So let's get going." And so he went there specifically to kind of get in the agency, learn the culture, all that kind of stuff, because he knew, and I think it was about 6 years later that he ran for sheriff.
So in Indiana, you can only run 2 terms as sheriff, so you get total of 8 years. Is that how it is in Arizona?
No, it's indefinite. He could have stayed sheriff as long as he wanted.
And you didn't have any aspirations being his number 2 for so long to run for sheriff, or was that just
no?
Fair enough.
I think because I was his number 2, I had no aspirations to run for sheriff. And quite frankly, when you're that close to the political machine, and I saw how his own party acted, which is my party, right? It's the same party. I saw how the opposing party acted. I saw how people in general acted in politics and what that consisted of. And I told him, I was like, "Bro, I may accidentally get elected this first time if you're supporting me. And I said, but I'd be a one-term sheriff because I am not kissing their ass, especially some of these people that you have to deal with that are two-faced bastards. I'm not doing that. So I'm going to be a different person than you, so much so that I don't think I'm going to get along well as an elected official, because the people you have to shake hands with and make agreements with and all that stuff, I just don't dig them, man. They don't have integrity.
That makes sense. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
politics I think are a different realm, and I think it's a unique position to be a sheriff and playing the
for sure.
politic game, and then trying to actually, I guess, be a cop. And there's very few that I feel like do it the right way, where they don't necessarily bend over to the politicians and more do what's right for law enforcement in general. But that's the only reason I was asking. And typically those don't stick around for a very long time because of that reason.
Right. And people say, like, they'll tell me, well, dude, you're a chief of police, so like, what's the difference? And the difference for me being, taking this job, I didn't have to go through an election, so I didn't have to promise anybody anything or any of that stuff, or I don't owe any political favors. I really I went for a position, and you lay yourself out there. Here's who I am. If you want me as a leader, here's what you'll get. And, it's essentially getting that job. So I didn't have to get into the political side of it. Now, as a chief, do I have to play politics? Of course, right? Because I work for people who are involved in politics, but you can navigate that and still not compromise yourself, right? Or what you believe in.
Yeah, there's some politics when it comes to being a chief, but I don't think it's as big because you're not dependent on citizens to vote for you. The mayor is, but again, that's not
right.
Your actions aren't going to be, I guess, they can be, but not a complete direct reflection of the chief, where the sheriff, whatever he does, the citizens can then, I theoretically vote him out if they don't like it or whatever.
Right.
I think it's pretty evident that I'll probably be speaking at the Justice X conference, but I wanted to give my little instructor spiel like everyone else is. And the main reason is because I wanted to come in here and thank all these amazing instructors that are willing to donate their time away from their family, their profession, and their friends to come and make the profession better. I don't know how I became so lucky with the ability to surround myself with amazing people in this profession. I have some of the most amazing friends in this profession. They're the most selfless individuals willing to go out on a whim, put a conference together with me and just to try to make the profession a little bit better. And I don't know how I pulled this off. I don't know what it is, but I'm beyond grateful for them. That being said, when I speak at the conference, communication is the biggest thing to me. I think that communication is the most important tool that we have as cops, and that's not verbal communication. That could be nonverbal communication. I'm going to focus a lot of my instruction on that aspect, where communication is universal. It doesn't have to just pertain to interdiction. It's all of law enforcement. If you have the ability to communicate with someone that is a multimillionaire and a guy that's homeless living on the street, your career is going to be a lot more fruitful. And you have this ability to have a lot more empathy when you're communicating and understanding and being actively listening. Someone else came up with this. I love it, so I'm going to throw it out there. As cops, we are often waiting to respond and we're not actively listening, but you can't do them both. So I think as cops, you ask a question, engage, and actively watch what their response is. It doesn't have to be this such a strict format of what you're asking, chronological order or anything like that. Let a conversation flow like you're talking to one of your friends. Don't just be so rigid. And that's where I think a lot of us fail, and it's not our fault. Until you know that you're doing it wrong, you'll never know. Like I was very robotic as a cop, and I couldn't communicate with people. I know that for a fact. I'm introverted, and I go to the police academy and all this other stuff. But anyways, I can't wait to see you in South Carolina in April of 2026 with all these amazing instructors. Children in law enforcement, or do you have any, or do they have aspirations or anything like that?
No, I have my oldest daughter is a nurse, so she's doing the nursing thing, and my middle daughter is actually a homemaker right now, married to a cop. So she's married to a cop out in Louisiana, and then my son, he says he wants to be a cop, and so I think right now we've kind of been talking as he's going into his senior year, like what are you thinking? Where's your head at? And he's looking at military and he's looking at law enforcement. And so I'm trying not to, I don't want to be that guy, right, that pushes him into a decision that I want. So I'm just trying to give him the best guidance I can. Like, hey man, here's the positives, here's the negatives. You make your decision. You got to be your own man. But he saw the tail end of my SWAT career, and he saw me. So he saw me as a motor working with that squad, and then getting into the cartel stuff and being in command of my SWAT team and the anti-smuggling and all that stuff. He was around a lot of those teams. And so I think he has seen, and now he's playing sports. So I think that team environment is appealing to him, and he kind of watched my interactions with, because you're tight with those squads, right? And you interact differently than you would just a normal patrol squad or whatever. And so I think all of that is appealing to him, and so trying to just guide him through that without influencing one way or the other, because I'm not trying to push him into it. I'm not trying to push him out of it.
You're kind of indifferent. If he wanted to do it, you wouldn't. A lot of cops I have on here are always like, I would tell my kids to never do it, and I think it pushes their kids, because everyone that says that, like, I told my kid not to be a cop, and he's a cop. So
yeah, no, and I am taking the indifferent role. I honestly, there was a point where I was like that, where I was like, dude, I don't want my kid, as we went through 2020 and we saw how all these people acted towards our profession and us, why would anybody want their kid involved in that? But I also know, and Mark kind of had this discussion with me, and he's like, dude, our profession needs good people to carry it forward, and why would we not encourage people to get, because it is the greatest career ever. Like, you can't find another show like this, right, to be a part of, man.
No.
And so it is the greatest career in the world, man. And there's people that would pay top dollar to just, I mean, they do, to just get their toe dipped in and get a little bit of the experience that we've had. And there's been times, I'm sure you're the same, where, like, there's a time I distinctly remember sitting on a Black Hawk as we were banking, and I'm sitting in the door gunner seat, and I'm looking down at the ground, and we're kind of banking around, getting ready to get dropped off. And I'm like, dude, like, this is fucking awesome. Like, I wish my kids could see this and experience this. And then there's people that would just die to be involved in one of those things, It's just the greatest fucking career there is.
Yeah, I mean, I see it's good to hear, like, that your son sports and kind of, has this aspiration to be in the military or be in law enforcement. And I feel like for a while there, like, I always preached about, like, we need to glorify the profession again and not always be so negative. And I think that there's a good balance. I think some of the social media stuff that we see of, like, dancing cops and stuff is kind of ridiculous, because you're giving people a false perception of what the job is that's not legit. And then you get people that jump in the job thinking that's what they're going to do, and then they start seeing dead bodies and just, the worst side of society, and they're not mentally prepared for it. But then the negative side too is just outplayed too. I just think that, like, it's so, like, it's in the middle. Like, you're seeing 5% on each side of what this profession is, and 90% of it's in the middle. And seeing hiring, our hiring processes the last couple times, it's been very, like, 20 to 22-year-old kids, like, athletic, like, could probably go do whatever the hell they wanted, yet now they're seeing the profession for what it is, when I was trying to get hired. And it just makes me happy now. Like, yeah, there was, like, a lull. I mean, I'm not saying those were bad hires or anything like that, but the pool that we're picking from is now bigger, and it's younger, and it's very educated, very, like, in shape, that pride themselves. And it's just cool to see that I guess evolution. I mean, it kind of sucks that we went through a lull, but now seeing it's went full circle, it makes me happy.
Yeah, same here, dude. And we felt the pressure of that lull, especially as leaders, where you're trying to fill gaps, and then you have people that are just working their tails off because those gaps are there. And so, yeah, we felt that too. But I know exactly what you're saying, and felt that. But I've always, just like my whole career, I've always had the feeling, because there's always been dudes, they're just miserable, man, no matter what, right? There's people that are like that, right? They're just miserable. And there's people that dog this career and, like, oh, it's not a real brotherhood, it's not this. And I get that, man, because there is some of that, right? There's people that stab you in the back, there's people that are conniving. It's all the stuff that happens in life, because human beings are human beings. But I think in our profession that it's a very high percentage that get into it for the right reasons, do the right stuff, and I think it's it's been a fantastic profession for me, and all I've ever done is just work, right? And if I get those people around me that are negative, I'm like, let's cut that person out of my life, because I don't need all that shit. And I actually had a friend that we were squad mates, man, and became close friends, and families hung out together and all that stuff. But always kind of a negative Nelly, man, and oh, this sucks, and this boss sucks, and that sucks. And finally, I told him, bro, leave. Like, if you don't like it that much, because I'm having a blast, and every time I'm around you, you bring me down, and I don't give a shit what that sergeant does, because I'm working, I'm doing my stuff, and yeah, he affects me here and there, but I don't let that drag me down, right? And I think that's the key, man.
No, I agree. Yeah, the same stuff that I say is it's ironic, but like I do this for myself. I'm
Yeah.
very self-motivated, and I had things that happened when I was a kid with people in my family that have addiction problems, and that's what motivated me to do this, and that still stays there. And
Yeah.
I don't worry about everything else that's going around. I try to stay as positive as possible, and I'm the same way. Like, you can only, I don't know. I feel like 10% is always positive, 10% is always negative with the population.
Right.
There's about 80% that could sway either way. And as
Yeah.
positive people, we don't need to convince people to have a good time. Like, I'm fine. You could have a bad time. I'll be fine. But the negative people, they want people to be negative with them because they want people to
Right.
be miserable. So
Yeah,
I
crabs
think
in a bucket, bro. Crabs in a bucket.
so for me, like, I'm always like, all right, like I see that kind of happening, and I'm like, try to like bring people over to me to be positive, but it's not as, I guess it's a little more awkward, but like, man, you got to leave that stuff alone. You got to make the best out of it. There's a lot more positive things, but it's still like, you could watch people bitch all day, and then it's easy for people to get sucked in there when you're trying to like talk about positive things. It's hard to yank them over here.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely, man. It is a weird phenomenon.
When it comes to sports, do you think sports has a huge role in law enforcement, as in either you played it or you still play it, the team aspect of it?
Man, that's a tough one, dude. I think my answer has changed over time, because I think when I first got into this, and some of the teams I was part of and stuff, I would say yes to that. But I think culturally we've changed so much as a society that I don't know anymore, because it just, people are so different now with homeschooling, and with the way these kids use technology and are kind of isolated, but still, because you and I probably, I'm assuming you're the same as me. Like, my childhood, going outside and connecting with friends and all getting together as a group was a thing. But I can tell you, like with my son, getting together with a group means they all jump online and they're in some game together, right?
Right.
So still kind of that team environment and talking together, working together, but it looks different. But kind of to wrap that into also what you said earlier about these younger cops, I really feel like these younger cops have much more of a servant's heart than I did when I was at their age. And they're more concerned about the bigger picture. Can I be a part of something bigger and have an effect on something bigger? Then I think I was a little more selfish in the beginning of my career for some of the reasons I was doing the work than they are now. So it's kind of cool to see.
No, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, for me anyways, now that you say that, I've never like removed myself to look at it, but a lot of the stuff that I did was very self-motivating, because it was self-rewarding, and it was like,
Right.
I don't need anyone else to be with me. I can go do it. Like, you can come along if you want, but I'm going to do it for me, and this is how I'm going to do it, and this is why I'm going to do it.
Right.
And I do think, by you saying that, I mean, just like thinking of situations with the younger cops, and I think you're onto something there, man. I think you're pretty much accurate. Like, that makes a lot of sense.
Yep, I think it's a thing, man. And God bless them for being like that, because I think, again, our profession goes through evolutions, right? And it's ebb and flow, and some of it's cyclical, but it still progresses forward. And I think a lot of that stuff just helps our profession move forward.
Yeah, I agree, man. Is there anything else you want to add? We end the podcast with one question. I try to keep it to about an hour when we're going over there a little bit. So,
All
anything
good,
you want to
man.
add?
I'm good, brother. If you're gonna end it with a question, we'll hit that. But if not, I just appreciate you having me. It's been good talk, brother.
No, yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm honored to have you on. But we teach with a company called Justice Academy. So, what is
Okay.
your definition of justice?
Ooh, man. I
I
think
gave you all these softballs all day. So,
yeah, dude, yeah. And that's a deep question, bro. I'd say my definition of justice is people living their life the way they want to live their life. And if they are wronged, that righteousness can be there can be righteousness on their behalf, right? Because I kind of think that's my job as a law enforcement officer is being the protector of victims. So like injustice, right, is it would be to me some dude coming over and committing a crime on some other dude, and justice being that I'm able to step in and either prevent that or rectify that problem.
I like it. No, that makes sense. A lot of people usually go like a deeper philosophy, and I'm more of a simple, and I like that because it just makes more sense. Like if someone does injustice to someone, then justice
Yeah.
should take care of the injustice.
Right. And I'm a simple cat, bro.
I love it. I love it, man. Well, it's truly my honor to have you on, and it's been nothing but a pleasure. So I thank you again for dedicating and giving me an hour plus of your time, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, man.